Hello everyone, thanks for tuning into today's main video. We're going to have a look at the weather for the next week to 10 days for today's main video, and this is going to take us to around the 29th of December. So over the Christmas period and heading up towards the new year now, with the week to 10 day video update time frame. We'll be able to extend out beyond that with the extended GFS and ECM ensembles running to around a couple of weeks, so that will get us into the new year. And we'll have a look at the Beijing Climate Centre for the next 40 days as well. So a lot to cram in, and we're going to start off with the very wet weather, of course, that we've got across the country at the moment. More about that in a second. But before I do anything else, I'm going to say a big thank you to our latest PayPal donor. So hello and a big thank you to latest PayPal donor for gas. Well, it's Peter Evans. Peter Evans has become our latest PayPal donor. Thank you so much, Peter, for doing that. Thank you so much for becoming a PayPal donor for Gazworthies. If you would like to become a donor for Gazworthies through PayPal, then all you need to do is come to the Gazworthies PayPal page, sign in to your PayPal account, and then give a donation to Gazworthies however much you like and you want. And by doing that, you become a donor for Gazworthies. We'll give you a mention in the videos as long as you want one. If you'd rather stay anonymous, that's absolutely fine. There's no problem with that at all. Just leave a little note with your donation and let us know. But otherwise, we'll give you a shout out. We'll say thank you so much for doing that. And big thank you to all of our donors, and special thank you to Peter Evans. Alternatively, you can become a patron for Gazworthies. We've got 65 patrons so far. So hello and big thank you to our 65 patrons. If you would like to become a patron for Gazworthies, then all you need to do, excuse me, all you need to do is come to the Gazworthies Patreon page, sign up for a Patreon account, and then you can give an ongoing monthly donation. It could be anything from $1 a month upwards to Gazworthies. By doing that, you become a patron for Gazworthies, and we'll give you a mention in the videos, and we'll say thank you so much for doing that. And you're helping us to pay for the website, Gazworthies.com, and keep content online. So a big thank you to all of our patrons, big thank you to all of our donors, and a special thank you to our latest PayPal donor, Peter Evans. Thank you so much, Peter, for doing that. Right, so I'm going to start off by having a look at today's wet weather. So we've got very heavy rain piling up from the southwest as we speak. Outbreaks of rain here in the southwest. Some very, very bright, vibrant colours in there too. This wet weather is trundling northeastwards into the Midlands and other parts of Wales increasingly. Can see some very intense rain. In with that, there could well be localised flooding today. Some places in the west and southwest could well have 25 millimetres of rain. An inch of rain is definitely possible for some of us today. We have got weather warnings as well. So this is the latest weather warnings page from the UK Met. So we've got a warning for heavy rain up across eastern parts of Scotland. Heavy rain causing localised flooding and travel disruption. That's from 9 o'clock tonight until 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. So there could be some disruption in the eastern and southeastern part of Scotland. Also got this yellow weather warning or weather alert just here. Yellow warning. So that's covering much of Wales, southwest England, the Midlands, central, southern, southeastern parts of England. Heavy rain leading to flooding and travel disruption in places. So that's valid from 2 o'clock this afternoon right way through until midday tomorrow. There's going to be lots of rain to come, and I think we could well be having to look at the flood alerts in tomorrow's video, because I think we're going to see the river levels rising up very rapidly in the next few hours, and I'm quite confident, quite sure that there is going to be some localised flooding. There'll certainly be flash flooding on the roads. I won't be at all surprised if some of the river levels start bursting their banks again. Have a look at the UK Met weather warnings page if you're at all concerned or worried about the weather today. Some very nasty weather out there. Central temperature is at 5.5 now, provisional, up to yesterday, the 18th of December. we're standing at 5.5 degrees. That's an anomaly of 0.6 of a degree above average, so around half a degree above average. That's probably subject to downwards correction, so if he was to shave off sort of 0.2, 0.3 of a degree, then we're probably somewhere in the low fives. In reality, we're probably somewhere around 5.1 or 5.2. So that's probably about as low as it's going to get. Over the next couple of days, that will tick up. Still, this final week of December is up the grabs, though. So where we finish up with the CT and the overall temperature for this December still is uncertain. It's still up the grabs where we're going to end up. But I don't think it's going to be a particularly large deviation this month. It may be finishing up around a degree above average, but if we get some overnight frost during the last week of December, then it may actually finish up a little bit lower than that. There is still a lot of uncertainty about this final week of December. So these are the 500 millibar high anomaly flowcharts from Penn State University for the next week to 10 days. This will take us to the 29th of December, so running towards the end of the month. We've got the ECMWF on the top, and the GFS, which we'll have a look in a moment, is on the bottom. So 500 millibars is an area in the absolute high pressure, low pressure are being moved around by the jet stream. Red extrapolates high pressure, blue to low pressure. Now you can see that with the ECM, we've got this large area of above average heights building over the UK and much of Northern Europe as well. So that's what we've been talking about in the videos over the past week or so. The chance of drier but also slightly colder conditions for the final week of December, around and after Christmas, running up towards New Year. The jet stream is going in that direction, so actually on the mild side of the jet, but because we're under such a large ridge of high pressure, there will probably be overnight frost and fog, and just generally quite a coldish and seasonable sort of feel for the last week of December with the ECM WF. But look at the GFS, it's very, very different. So again, this uncertainty for this last week of December is continuing. I did a video yesterday titled it Modern Nightmare Before Christmas, and this certainly is a bit of a nightmare to forecast this sort of Christmas week up to New Year. The GFS has the above average heights up towards Greenland. It has below average heights still just barreling in from off the Atlantic. So obviously that's a much more unsettled scenario. And despite the blocking up towards Greenland, it's actually relatively mild as well because the air is still coming in off the Atlantic coast. But the main difference, more so than temperature, I would have thought, actually, just in the overall pattern, because that's a much more cyclonic pattern with the GFS in this week to 10 day time frame, whereas the ECM is very, very anti-cyclonic, very high pressure dominated. It's quite unusual to see them so different within the 7 to 10 day time frame. So again, it's just highlighting the terrible uncertainty that we've got and sort of a modern nightmare that's going on for this final week of December. GFS, upper air temperatures and precipitation ensembles. Now, someone's asked me to have a look at this place. I'm not sure quite how you pronounce it. I think it's Blanavon, but I'm not sure if I've got that right. So if I've got that wrong, then that person can let me know in the comments. That's one of his YouTube channel. But I think it's Blanavon. So the red line here is the 30-year upper air temperature average for Blanavon. And we can see that at the moment we're above average with the temperatures. We're going to stay above average with the upper air temperatures for the next few days. And then as we get towards Christmas, they're going to drop. Get a bit of a cold snap coming through there around Christmas Eve, Christmas Day. But after that, through the last week of December into early January, temperatures are taking off. Certainly the upper air temperatures are taking off. We still have these few cold outlier members down here. They are outliers. They're not particularly well supported by the broad sort of thrust of the ensemble. And generally, it looks like the final week of December from an upper air temperature perspective is significantly above average. Bear in mind, though, if some of those are building up high pressure, then that isn't necessarily all that mild on the surface. It could actually be quite cold on the surface with frost and fog. So it's one of those situations where you do have to think about the possibility that it could be colder on the surface under high pressure. However, from a precipitation precipitation side, there's not a huge amount of sign of high pressure, I have to say. So plenty of rainfall spikes coming up for the next couple of days. Next few days will be very wet. Lots of rain to come, including today's deluge, of course. Then after that, through Christmas towards the new year, it just stays very unsettled. Further rainfall spikes coming through at regular intervals. Again, just telling us that the weather is likely to be staying fairly unsettled. There's no real sign of a drier interlude there that you'd expect if we are going to build up high pressure strongly. So again, that's just re-emphasising the uncertainty between the GFS, which we know is quite unsettled still, and the ECM, which is much more anti-cyclonic. This is a real nightmare to forecast for. Temperature anomalies from the 19th to 27th of December, a little bit above average, going to be slightly on the milder than average side, especially so for England and Wales. Precipitation anomalies from the 19th to 27th of December, a bit drier than average for Scotland and Northern Ireland, a little bit wetter than average for southern and southeastern parts of England and Wales. So it remains quite wet in the south, a little bit drier in the north and west. This is how the GFS is looking for Sunday. Low pressure is in control of the weather on Sunday into the Christmas period. So that's 23rd of December. We've got an area of low pressure just out to our west on Monday. By the time we get through to Christmas Eve, that low pressure is exiting the eastern side of the country, moving into the southern North Sea. That takes a lot of rain from Monday to Tuesday across England and Wales. As that clears out of the way, we turn it a bit colder, but also brighter, with winds swinging into the northwest. But we get a slight little bump of high pressure there for Christmas Day. That will bring us a mainly dry but quite cold day. There could be frost early and late, so not a particularly white Christmas at all, really, but there could be whiteness on the ground early and late from frost. So it could look quite pretty and seasonable on Christmas morning. That ridge is still with us into Boxing Day, giving us another day of mostly dry but also potentially quite cold weather. But then after that, we find that low pressure begins to push back in from off the low pressure begins to push back in from off the Atlantic, and we start to draw up these very mild southwesterly winds again. So I've arrived at day 10, which is Sunday 29th of December. We're bringing up a very mild southwesterly. That will probably have outbreaks of rain with it, certainly for western parts of the country. Reasonably dry though in the southeast, but the main thing would be the big increase in temperature into double digits for all of us. And that very mild but increasingly unsettled weather then continues up to New Year. Low pressure coming back in from off the Atlantic, and that's how we look as we get to the end of the GFS run, which is Saturday the 4th of December. High pressure centred over France, Spain and Portugal. Low pressure out to the northwest. That's about as zonal as it gets, with mild or very mild southwesterly winds wafting in across the country. This is the GEM. Again, we've got that area of low pressure on Sunday, bring quite wet weather into the early part of next week. Stays unsettled, begins to go a bit colder as well as winds start to turn into north. This is Christmas Eve. Low pressure clearing away to the east, taking rain with it, and then we're turning wind into the north, so probably becoming a bit colder with wintry showers in northern and western parts of the country. We had a ridge build for Christmas Day. That ridge is still with us on Boxing Day, so it settles things down over the days of Christmas itself. It does turn drier, and it will be quite cold under that ridge, with the risk of some quite harsh night frost. So yes, a seasonable feel, and certainly looking quite pretty from frost, not from snow, but from frost on Christmas morning, and again potentially on Boxing Day morning. Low pressure then has a go at trying to move in from off the Atlantic, but doesn't really come to much, and then we finish up with high pressure sort of in control actually. So by day 10, unlike what the GFS was showing, this is much more settle with high pressure dominating, and it would be cold as well. So this turns things quite cold and frosty. The GM turns things quite cold and frosty through this Christmas to New Year period under this area of high pressure. ECM, well again, looking unsettled as we start off on Sunday. Low pressure in control, and then the low pressure clears away as we go through to Christmas Eve, starts to push away to the east. We're bringing in this quite cold and showery northwesterly wind for Christmas Eve, and then we start to build up some pressure, higher pressure. So we've arrived. I've just got to pause the video and answer the phone. Okay, we're back. Sorry about that, phone answered and everything back in business. So, where did we get to? So, we got to Boxing Day with the ECM. And high pressure was building in. So, yes, this is settling things down and turning things colder for Christmas. That's the GFS, the GM and the ECM all agreeing that for the days of Christmas, so for Christmas Day through to Boxing Day, we're under high pressure. So, it looks like there's a bit of agreement there for the actual days of Christmas to be rather dry and cold now. And then the ECM just extends this high pressure spell out, as we saw within the 500 millibar high anomaly flow charts. That high pressure sticks around the country, bringing lots of dry and also cold and frosty weather. So the far northwest will be a little bit milder with these southwesterly winds, but otherwise would actually be quite cold under that high pressure, with a growing risk of hard night frost and maybe some freezing fog. But you see the difference. It only takes that high pressure to be a little bit further southwards, where the GFS has it. It only takes it to be down here, and we start to draw in very mild air from the southwest. That's why we're saying it's still uncertain where this December lands up in terms of its CET. But it does look as though the chance of a rather dry but also quite cold week between Christmas and New Year is possibly increasing, and certainly for the days of Christmas Day and Boxing Day. I wouldn't necessarily go much further than that at the moment, but certainly for the days of Christmas Day and Boxing Day, we could well be looking at quite dry but also quite cold weather with the risk of some night frost. This is the rainfall forecast based on that ECM run. So loads of rain today. Of course, I've already established real deluge pushing up across the country. More heavy rain tonight, especially through the Midlands and southeastern parts of England. And then into tomorrow, that rain just trundles up the eastern side, taking further heavy rain with it. We go through to the weekend, and we've got more wet weather here in the south on the 22nd of December. That's Sunday, so further heavy rain up to Sunday for southern parts of the country. But then as we get through to Monday, if we start to see the showers coming more towards the north and the west, and then that gets us to Christmas Eve, where we see wintry showers in the northwest. But actually things are gradually drying out as we move towards the Christmas period itself. This is Christmas Day, a few wintry showers possible in the west, but again, most places dry for Christmas Day. There's a few showers pushing across parts of the Midlands and southern England, and a little bit of sleetiness in with those as well. Boxing Day, we're into dry conditions by then, and an increasing risk of frost and fog, and these dry conditions then take us on into towards day 10. Some rain coming to the very far northwest of the country, but up to day 10 most places are dry with the ECM under that large area of high pressure. This is the temperature forecast as well from Tameteo based on that ECM run. So we start off very mild, bathed in these yellow colours, plenty of mild weather. Tomorrow will be a little bit cooler, temperatures returning closer to average through tomorrow and into the weekend. It starts to get a bit colder though up in the north later in the weekend. As we go through into early next week, it begins to cool down further. So this is Christmas Eve, where we're seeing temperatures on Christmas Eve kind of like mid to upper sort of single digits. Then on to Christmas Day, we start to get some frost beginning to appear. Temperatures going perilously close to freezing there early on Christmas Day, so that could look nice and pretty and seasonable. And then a more widespread frost setting in on Christmas night. You see many places getting frost. That's taking temperatures down to -2 to -4 quite widely, especially in northern areas, but not exclusively so. And Boxing Day itself is actually a pretty cold day. Temperatures only up into mid-single digits at best. Another widespread frost on Boxing Day night to the 27th. So frost becoming really widespread as we go through to 27th. Actually, some places staying around freezing all day there on the 27th of December. And another widespread frost on the night of the 27th to the 28th. So it does look as though the frosts are going to get more and more widespread through this Christmas week, if this is right. By day 10, just beginning to go a little bit milder out to the northwest, starting to lose the frost a little bit. But even then, England and Wales looking quite cold. So that is a pretty cold Christmas to New Year period with the ECM, but we saw that the GFS is an awful lot milder. These are the options are on the table within the ECM ensembles today for day 10, which gets us to the 29th of December, we have got 13 members of the ECM ensembles with high pressure to our north and slinking down through the country. So that's bringing lots of dry weather up to day 10, probably with hard overnight frost. We've got 11, including the control and the operation run, that have a high pressure just a little bit more to the north, just allowing us in a slightly colder easterly flow to come round the edge of that high pressure. So that's just a little bit more continental. That explains why there's more frost going on between Christmas and New Year. 9 over here that have high pressure to the east but also low pressure to the west. They're milder. A lot of dry weather with those, but they are a milder option. Bring the air in off the Atlantic. 8 down here with high pressure centred over top a little bit to the south of the country. That is milder for northern and western areas. 6 with high pressure away to the southwest, low pressure to the northeast, and they're a little bit more unsettled potentially. And then 4 that have northern blocking, high pressure centred around Greenland and low pressure over to the south of the country. That's probably the coldest and most wintry option. That's bringing the winds from the east to the northeast, and the low pressure could be producing the risk of some snow some parts of the country. But only 4 of those, dear Mad. It looks as though generally the eastern ensembles are favouring influences for high pressure between Christmas and New Year, but where the high pressure sits determines what the temperature is doing and everything else. In 2 weeks' time, these options that we got, this is the 3rd of January, 14 members of the ECM ensembles with high pressure out to our west, low pressure to our east, and bringing in the winds from the northwest or the west, so relatively dry and quite mild with those. 10 with high pressure sitting to the north of us, generally, low pressure more towards the south, they could be quite cold. 10 with another 10 with high pressure away to the northwest, low pressure as a trough sitting to the east. That will be bringing down cold northerly winds and could be a bit wintry too. Another 10 down here with high pressure to our south and bringing in westerlies. That's a dry and potentially very mild option. And then 7 with high pressure sort of to the west, northwest, low pressure to the northeast. So that's bringing in the winds from the northwest and aligning the jets in northwest to southeast. Could be a little bit on the cold side with those. Lots of options on the table for the new year, telling us that the uncertainty, if anything, continues and gets worse into the new year. Finally, the Beijing Climate Centre, so these are 500 millibar heights, broken down into 10-day periods. The first 10-day period will take us from the 21st to the 30th of December. The coming 10 days over Christmas looking unsettled still, generally. With low pressure below average heights in the Atlantic and over the UK. There is some blocking up to the north as well. Remember, over time we probably get more influence from high pressure, especially as we get closer to Christmas and beyond it. That's how the next 10-day period looks. This one is the 31st of December, New Year's Eve, to the 9th of January. High pressure then sits to the north, low pressure is to the south, and we could be bringing in easterly winds. So that could be a rather cold and maybe slightly wintry to the first 10 days to January, actually. Would depend on the exact placement of the trough and the ridge, but overall I think that could be quite cold and quite wintry for the start of January. The next 10-day period is the 10th to the 19th of January. Looks like we re-establish a westerly flow bed and start to build some high pressure down to the southwest. Winds begin to go a little bit more southwesterly, so temperatures start to lift up and it starts to get a bit milder as well. And then we go through to the final 10-day period, days 31 to 40, which is the 20th, 29th of January. We have low pressure out to our west. High pressure is sort of to our south and east. That looks very mild, potentially quite unsettled, but very mild with that. Winds coming in from the southwest. So except for a slightly colder interlude, sort of around and just after the new year, the first 10 days of January, the Beijing Climate Centre is looking quite mild, actually, as it goes further on into January. No sign of a sustained cold spell of weather, but of course it remains the case that any forecast beyond a few days is subject to huge health warnings, and that's going up to 40 days ahead. I think we've got to focus on the next week to 10 days. So gradually we're seeing a trend towards a drier and colder interlude for Christmas, which is quite interesting for the days of Christmas, which is quite interesting because that featured a lot within the Christmas updates when we was using the CFS. So if we do get a few days of drier, colder weather just over Christmas, it'll be hats off to the CFS because that was a recurring theme through those Christmas updates. So we shall see about that. Beyond Christmas, we have various options on the table. I think overall we probably favour relatively dry and cold weather continuing up towards New Year under that ridge of high pressure. But we saw from the GFS it wants to pump up the southwesterlies and get us back into unsettled conditions very quickly. So after Christmas, I think we say that's really uncertain. But up to Christmas, very unsettled. And then just over Christmas itself, could turn drier and colder, maybe with a rather seasonable, sort of frosty type feel. Not much snow around, but if we have frost on the ground, it will on Christmas morning, and again on Boxing Day morning and Christmas night, it will feel quite seasonable, and it'll look quite pretty. So we'll see whether that comes off or not. Right, talking of Christmas, I think I'm going to have another Christmas update for you tonight around 7 o'clock. And then tomorrow I've got JMA Friday, week 10 AV update tomorrow as well, probably. So keep checking back to all of the updates at Gaz But that's all for now, and thanks for watching.